Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. The idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is actually a myth. It was promoted by cereal companies to sell their products. In reality, it does not matter when breakfast is eaten or what foods are consumed, although it is still a meal that should not be neglected. The Statue of Liberty is actually in the middle of an action to free herself from chains. This can only be observed from the air. Her right foot is stepping forward, and next to it, there is a broken chain. The reason why photos from past decades at sporting events have a blue tint and thick haze is actually because people were allowed to smoke in indoor stadiums, which caused the smoke to concentrate and become visible under the lighting. Leafcutter ants do not eat the leaves they collect. In reality, they use these leaves to cultivate a specific type of fungus inside their nests. They feed the fungus with the cut leaves and then feed on the fungus they grow, acting as an external digestive system for the ants. Cats normally hate water because their fur does not insulate them well when it is wet, causing an unpleasant sensation. However, the Turkish van cat is an exception. Its coat has a unique texture that makes it water-resistant, and it enjoys swimming. The first move of pawns in chess, where they can advance 2 squares if the player chooses, did not exist in the earliest versions of the game. According to documents that have been found, it was first used in the year 1280 in Spain. Research showed that people who play Tetris in the days following a traumatic event were helped in preventing the formation of associated negative memories. This was only tested with Tetris, but it is believed that other video games might also help. The retail chain Costco sells approximately 60 million rotisserie chickens each year. In fact, the roasted chicken is one of its most iconic products and is kept at a low price as a strategy to attract customers to the stores. The company even built its own poultry production facilities in the United States to control costs and ensure supply. These chickens are sold with very small profit margins, but they drive the purchase of many other products inside the warehouse. The lobsters that are usually eaten are young and are only a fraction of the size they can reach. Older or larger specimens have less flavor, but they can reproduce more easily. That is why they are protected. Killing a lobster that is 100 years old or more is considered a threat to the species. The inventor of the upside-down ketchup bottle that has made our lives so much easier has earned up to $13 million to date. Mike the Headless Chicken is a chicken that survived 18 months after his head was cut off. The event occurred in 1945 in Colorado, when the farmer who attempted to slaughter him did not completely sever the brain stem or the jugular vein, which allowed the bird to maintain basic functions. His owner fed him with a dropper directly into the esophagus and cleaned the mucus to prevent him from choking. Over time, he became a national attraction and generated significant income at fairs and shows. People who sleep as they came into the world, that is, naked, are more satisfied with their relationships according to a study. Some surveys conducted in the United Kingdom found that those who sleep without clothes report higher levels of happiness in their relationships compared to those who wear pajamas. Researchers suggest that skin-to-skin contact may promote the release of oxytocin, a hormone associated with bonding and trust. In addition, sleeping naked has also been linked to better regulation of body temperature and greater comfort during the night. 5% of people will never experience a headache in their entire lives. Although it may seem incredible, various medical surveys have shown that a small fraction of the population claims to have never suffered this type of pain, not even in common situations such as stress, dehydration, or colds. Experts believe that genetic factors, higher pain thresholds, and differences in nervous system sensitivity may influence this phenomenon. In contrast, the vast majority of people experience headaches at least once a year. An episode of Peppa Pig had to be banned in Australia, where the anthropomorphic pig Peppa was shown being friendly with spiders, something that, in Australia, is truly dangerous. Even the most harmless spider there is a creature out of your nightmares that can kill you. Bad Peppa. Victoria's Secret model Karolina Kurkova was born without a belly button due to a complication at birth. Editors have a catalog of belly buttons in different positions so they can Photoshop them onto photos where she appears in underwear or a bikini. Hawaiian pizza was invented in Canada at the Satellite Restaurant in Ontario in 1962. It was created by Sam Panopoulos, a Greek immigrant who decided to add canned pineapple to a ham pizza as an experiment inspired by the sweet and sour combination of Asian cuisine he was trying at the time. The name Hawaiian does not refer to the place where it was created, but to the brand of pineapple used. Over time, it became one of the most controversial and popular pizzas in the world. In Poland, there is a forest where there are more than 400 pine trees that are bent 90 degrees near their base and have a curved shape. They all point north for some reason. These trees disprove the famous saying, "A tree that grows crooked will never have its branch straighten." On the island of Yap in Micronesia, enormous limestone discs called rai were used as currency. Some weighed up to 4 tons, that is, approximately 8,800 pounds, and were so difficult to move that they remained in place, left right where they were. Ownership was transferred through public verbal agreements, without the need to physically move the stone. Even a rai that sank into the sea continues to be valid as currency thanks to community consensus. If all humans on the planet participated in a rock, paper, scissors tournament organized in elimination rounds where the loser is out and the winner advances, with the world population of 8,100,000,000, the absolute winner would only have to win 33 consecutive matches to become the sole world champion. But of course, they would also have to be the luckiest person in the world. The color of the eggs that hens lay usually matches the color of their earlobes. Yes, hens have ears, although they are very different from those of humans. And if they are white, they lay white eggs, while if they are red, they lay brown eggs. Some also lay blue or green eggs. The smell of wet earth or rain, called petrichor, is produced by a chemical compound called geosmin. The human nose is so sensitive to geosmin that it can detect concentrations as low as 0.4 parts per billion. It is believed to be linked to survival, and that is why we developed that detection ability. The Portuguese man-of-war, also known as a bluebottle, may look like a jellyfish, but it is actually a colony of specialized animals that act as if they were a single organism. Its tentacles can measure up to 98 feet. When they are detected on beaches, people are evacuated, since its sting can hurt quite a bit. The United States Department of Agriculture says that a sandwich must contain 3% meat and no more than 50% bread. It is mandatory for every Formula One car to have a wooden plank on the bottom during races. This strange requirement is used to measure how low the car is. If the plank wears down too much, the driver can be disqualified. The sun is the most perfect sphere observed in nature. Measurements taken with space instruments have shown that the difference between its equatorial and polar diameter is minimal, only a few miles, despite its enormous size and constant rotation, which makes it almost perfectly round. Sunflowers are capable of cleaning radioactive waste. They can extract contamination through their roots and store it in their leaves. That is why they are the international symbol against nuclear disarmament. During the broadcast in Great Britain of the Apollo 11 moon landing, the background music heard in the BBC studios the entire time was songs by Pink Floyd. If you eat a spoonful of sugar after eating something very spicy, it will neutralize the heat. This happens because sugar helps reduce the sensation caused by capsaicin, the compound responsible for the burning feeling. Although it does not eliminate it completely, it can lessen the intensity and relieve the discomfort faster than water. Anteaters can eat more than 35,000 ants each day. They use their long, sticky tongue, which can measure more than 1.6 feet, to capture them quickly. They have no teeth, so they swallow their prey whole and grind it in their stomach with the help of sand and small stones. In Japan, official statistics show that every year there are many more deaths related to mental health problems than those caused by violent crimes. Social factors, work pressure, and stigma surrounding emotional well-being have been pointed out as elements that influence this reality. The Tsar Bomba of Russia was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. But despite that, it was also the cleanest, since its modifications prevented 97% of the side effects. Until recently, in 2009, in China there were still elementary schools sponsored by cigarette brands. One school in the province of Shijiazhuang had a sign that said, "Tobacco can help you become a winner," which is not true. It is completely legal to get drunk on the street in Las Vegas. In much of the Strip, the consumption of alcohol in public is allowed, as long as the drink is in plastic containers and not glass. However, there are restrictions in residential areas and during certain special events. The 1960s Batman, portrayed by Adam West, was known for his moral lessons that included the importance of wearing seatbelts, doing homework, eating vegetables, and drinking milk. A broken clock is correct twice a day. This is because if it is stopped at a fixed time and operates on a 12-hour format, it will match the real time at two specific moments. It is a classic example of how something seemingly useless can occasionally be right. Liu Siju, a Chinese math genius who won a gold medal in the Mathematics Olympiad, declined a full scholarship to study at MIT. He preferred to become a Buddhist monk in a monastery. In 2005, a 4-year-old boy from Texas, United States, who was searching for fossils, ended up finding dinosaur bones more than 100 million years old. The discovery occurred on a ranch near Dallas and was later examined by paleontologists who confirmed they belonged to a herbivorous dinosaur from the Cretaceous period. A hippopotamus mouth is so large that a child 3 feet 11 inches tall can stand on its tongue. If you are a child of that height, try getting into a hippopotamus's mouth and you will be able to. That is not true. Never try it. I mean, just in case. Only 13 people attended the premiere of the movie Clerks at an independent film festival in 1993. Most of the production team and actors. Later on, it would become a cult film with a sequel and spin-offs. When basketball player Yao Ming played for the first time in Miami, the game was promoted by giving away 8,000 fortune cookies. Yao was not offended because he had never seen one and assumed it was an American tradition. The Roman Emperor Augustus saw a man who wanted to throw a slave to be eaten by sea lampreys as punishment for breaking a cup. Upon seeing this, Augustus freed the slave and ordered all of the man's cups to be broken. In 1898, Nikola Tesla made many people believe he could control a toy boat by shouting commands at it. In reality, he had invented radio control and was controlling the boat himself. It is believed that 1/3 of the entire world population is infected with the tuberculosis bacteria, but the vast majority never show symptoms. Jet engines are tested by throwing 800 gallons of water per minute, balls of ice, and dead chickens into the running engines to make sure they maintain their shape and there will be no malfunctions. It has been observed that psychopaths are immune to contagious yawning and are unlikely to show the typical jump response when startled. The first police force in Australia was made up of the best-behaved convicts. It was created in the late 18th century in the colony of New South Wales, where most of the population were British prisoners. Authorities trusted the inmates with the best conduct to maintain order and watch over other prisoners. Most body fat leaves the body when we exhale. Since this video started, planet Earth has already traveled more than 4,970 miles through space. In 1959, the winner of a local election in Sao Paulo, Brazil, was a rhinoceros named Cacareco, who lived in the city zoo. His candidacy was promoted by students. Voters chose the animal because, according to one of them, they preferred a rhinoceros to a donkey. The millions of Rick rolls have generated almost no royalties for Rick Astley, but the renewed fame he has gained has helped revive his music career. If we could somehow extract all the gold from the core of planet Earth, we could cover the entire surface of the planet with a layer of gold that would reach up to our knees. The world would look like the lobby of a hotel in the United Arab Emirates, or the house of a rapper. NASA astronauts earn around $64,000 a year. An inventor from ancient Greece named Heron of Alexandria invented the first vending machine, which dispensed holy water when you inserted a coin. In addition, he also invented the steam engine and the first wind-powered machine. All of this 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. Queen Elizabeth II received her first corgi in 1933 when she was still a child. From then on, she developed a great fondness for this breed, and throughout her life, she had more than 30 corgis, in addition to some dorgies, which were crosses between corgis and dachshunds. In 2022, the year of her death, she still had 4 dogs, which were later adopted by Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. British war tanks have to be built with a tea preparation station. To be able to give someone a tattoo in South Korea, you must first obtain a medical license. The movie Dragon Ball Evolution from 2009 is considered a major failure. Even the screenwriter, Ben Ramsey, publicly apologized for making it without passion. Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, confessed that when he saw the film, the result irritated him so much that he became involved in the franchise again, which led to new movies and the series Dragon Ball Super a few years later. The German interrogator Hans Scharf was against using physical torture methods. Instead, he took prisoners out for walks and invited them to eat, where they revealed information on their own. After the war, he moved to the United States, where he became a mosaic artist. One day, Charlie Sheen spent $6,500 on 2,615 seats at the Anaheim Stadium to catch a home run with 3 friends. There was not a single home run in the game that day. Typical Charlie Sheen. In practically no country in the world is it common to place flags outside houses and everywhere all year round continuously, as is done in the United States. In France and Great Britain, for example, it is frowned upon and associated with nationalist ideologies, while in Germany, except in special cases, the only flags displayed in the country are usually those of Parliament. In Brazil, a Mega Man comic licensed by Capcom called The New Adventures of Mega Man was published. It only lasted 16 issues between 1996 and 1998, but it is remembered by fans because it included strange and unusual elements in the franchise. Later, the creators of the comic admitted that they had never played a Mega Man title. The word boycott originated from Charles Boycott, an agent who collected rent on farms in Ireland on behalf of the British. The farmers demanded a reduction. Boycott refused and evicted them. Instead of attacking him, the farmers decided not to do business with him. They boycotted him. The astronauts of Apollo 11 could not get life insurance. No company wanted to provide it, so they signed photographs for their families to auction in case the landing failed and they all died. The Ottoman Empire. 2.5-pound banknote is a collector's item for banknote enthusiasts because of its unusual denomination. It was issued in 1916 during a period of inflation and shortage of metal coins in what is now Turkey. The closest in value were the 1- and 5-pound notes. The Tanganyika laughter epidemic was a phenomenon that occurred in 1962 at a school in Tanzania, where a group of students began laughing uncontrollably. The laughter spread, affecting hundreds of people and forcing schools to close. It is believed to have been a case of mass hysteria due to stress. The London Underground was originally going to extend all the way to Paris. In the late 19th century, there were proposals to build a tunnel under the English Channel that would directly connect both capitals, but the plans were cancelled due to military and security concerns. Decades later, that idea materialized with the Channel Tunnel Railway. According to a study, the average woman will spend 17 years of her life on a diet. This figure comes from surveys conducted in different countries, where many women begin dieting in adolescence and repeat it intermittently over decades. On average, they may start their first diet around 15 years old and try dozens of different regimens during their lives. There is a book that gathers the recipes of all the Burger of the Day creations that appeared in the series Bob's Burgers in its early seasons. There are 75 different ones, and they were compiled by real chefs. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. The period in which food and agricultural products began to be transported from one side of the world to the other, starting in the 15th century, was called the Columbian Exchange. Before this, for example, there was no coffee in Colombia, potatoes in Ireland, tomatoes in Italy, pineapples in Hawaii, or oranges in Florida, foods that became some of the most popular in those countries. Steven Spielberg waited 10 years to make Schindler's List because he did not feel mature enough to tackle such a deep and emotionally heavy story about the Holocaust. During that time, he even tried to have other directors direct it and only took it on when he felt that his own life and experiences gave him the necessary maturity to treat the subject with respect and realism. Elephants can reach things that are up to approximately 23 feet high with their trunks. This is because they combine the length of their trunk, which can measure around 6.5 feet, with the height of their own body and the ability to stretch on their hind legs in certain situations. Their trunk contains more than 40,000 individual muscles, which allows them to perform extremely precise movements, from pulling leaves from the tops of trees to picking up objects as small as a coin without damaging it. According to different undercover security tests at airports, between 70% and 95% of prohibited items passed through security checkpoints without being detected. To reinforce this statistic, in 2023, 300 cases were identified of people who passed prohibited objects and even bypassed controls unintentionally, and no one noticed until afterward. Many primates have the anatomical structure necessary to speak like humans, but they lack the neural connections necessary to control their larynx precisely. This brain limitation prevents them from articulating words and developing complex spoken language. The first theater exclusively for motion pictures opened in 1905 in Pittsburgh, United States. The founders called it Nickelodeon because the admission price was a 5-cent coin, popularly called a nickel, and odeon, the ancient Greek word for theater. The longest prison sentence requested was 384,912 years for a 22-year-old mail carrier in Spain who was accused of not delivering more than 42,000 letters. In the end, the sentence was only 14 years. With only 18 lines of dialogue and less than 20 minutes of screen time, Aurora from Sleeping Beauty is the Disney main character who speaks the least and appears the least amount of time in an animated film from this studio. Dragonflies can fly backward, something that practically no other insect or animal can do. And they also have great vision with their compound eyes that allow them to see in almost 360 degrees. They also have 6 legs, but despite that, they cannot walk. They use their legs only to perch on plants. Giant rats from sub-Saharan Africa are trained to detect tuberculosis, which is the second deadliest infectious disease. Although they are not currently an accepted diagnostic technique, one rat is capable of evaluating more samples in 10 minutes than a scientist in a laboratory during an entire day. Kangaroos often enter shallow water when they are in a fight or when they feel threatened. They do this to use it as an advantage when their rival chases them. They can use their front legs to hold it down until it drowns. It has happened with dogs and even with humans. The brain of cats is biologically more similar to the human brain than the brain of dogs. The brain regions of humans and cats are alike, especially those responsible for generating and processing emotions. Vikings had swords made with steel that would not be used again until the Industrial Revolution 800 years later. Many of these weapons, known as Ulfbert swords, were made with very pure, high-carbon steel, unusual for medieval Europe. It is believed the metal may have arrived through trade routes from Asia. If you put a grape cut in half but still connected by the skin into a microwave oven, it can generate a ball of plasma fire. A woman named Cha Sa-soon from South Korea holds the record for the most attempts to pass a driving test to obtain a license. She achieved it after 960 attempts and more than $15,000 in expenses. Walt Disney decided to place trash cans in Disneyland no more than 30 steps apart. This was after they calculated an average of how many steps a person walks with trash before throwing it on the ground, something they observed in other company parks. Because Studio Ghibli retained the promotional rights to the movie Spirited Away, the advertising Disney gave it was very limited. The movie was only mentioned in a small section on Disney's official website. It received less publicity than movies that went straight to DVD, like The Lion King 4 and those. Hitler planned to rebuild Berlin after the war as a neo-Roman city. The main building for events was going to be so large that it could actually rain inside due to the combined breath of 150,000 people. The band Duran Duran, which has sold more than 1 billion records during its career, had for a time 3 members with the last name Taylor, and they were not related. The name of the band comes from Dr. Durand Durand, a character from the 1968 science fiction film Barbarella, starring Jane Fonda. In 1956, IBM introduced its first hard drive, which consisted of 50 platters of approximately 24 inches each, with a total capacity of 3.75 megabytes. Although today thousands of times that amount of information can be stored on a card smaller than a fingernail, that hard drive was the foundation for the development of storage technology over the years. Anne Hathaway wanted to be a nun when she was younger. She grew up in a Catholic family and during her teenage years seriously considered religious life. However, she later distanced herself from the church and decided to focus on acting, a career that led her to win an Oscar. According to a study, birds never collide with other birds in the air because they always turn to the right. Research on flocks has observed that many birds tend to veer slightly to that side when approaching head-on, which reduces the risk of collisions. This behavior could be related to brain lateralization, meaning a natural preference for processing certain stimuli with a specific hemisphere. Paddle shifters on the steering wheel, so common today in sports and luxury cars, were born in Formula One. The first single-seater to use them was the Ferrari 640 in 1989. This innovation allowed faster gear changes without taking hands off the wheel, improving control. The first streetcar to implement them was the Ferrari F355 in 1997. According to research, people spend around 60% of the time they are conversing talking about themselves. This number increases to 80% when it comes to conversations on social media. The Lord of the Rings is not a trilogy. It was a complete book. But for publishers, it was easier to print 3 small books than one giant one. J.R.R. Tolkien conceived it as a single work internally divided into 6 books. But in 1954 and 1955, it was published in 3 volumes for economic and printing logistical reasons. Boxer Evander Holyfield lost more than 13 pounds in order to participate in his first title fight. When he won, he had to be hospitalized immediately. He required more than 2 gallons of intravenous fluids to recover. Apple paid $10 million to the band U2 to have exclusivity of their album Songs of Innocence, and later downloaded it on iTunes and onto the iPods of 500 million people automatically without asking them. The reception was negative. Only 6.7% of people played the album, and 1 week later, Apple released a tool to delete it. The first edition of the DVD of the movie The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was designed to look like a pirated disc with the name of the movie written in marker. This caused many buyers to return the product because they thought they had an illegal copy. The movie Borat, which came out earlier, had a similar disc design. Mosquitoes prefer certain blood types. People with type O blood are the most prone to bites. Studies indicate that these insects can detect chemical differences in the skin and sweat, and they tend to land more frequently on those with type O than on those with type A or B. The continents separated long ago at the same speed that fingernails grow. That is, very slow, but fast at the same time. In 1920, Thomas Edison declared that he was building a device similar to a telephone, but to be able to speak with spirits or ghosts. However, he never mentioned it again, and it is unknown whether prototypes or tests were carried out. The founder of the restaurant Wendy's, Dave Thomas, was an apprentice of Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Thomas came up with ideas such as making a commercial with a rotating bucket and putting the Colonel on television, among other things. Later, he sold his percentage of the franchises he owned to found what would become Wendy's. There are scientists working on a magical spray that can heal skin wounds in just a few minutes. In reality, it involves biomaterials and solutions with cells or regenerative compounds that accelerate healing, stimulate collagen production, and reduce infections. Technologies that are already being tested in hospitals and laboratories. Company executives in China can be sentenced to death if they commit fraud. In the Chinese legal system, certain economic crimes considered to be of great magnitude, especially those involving enormous financial losses or seriously affecting the public, can receive extremely severe penalties, including capital punishment. In recent years, there have been cases of high-level executives convicted of multi-million-dollar fraud, corruption, or embezzlement schemes. In 2001, DC Comics invited Stan Lee to redraw its universe in Just Imagine, a comic series with 13 issues. He turned Batman into an African-American billionaire wrestler, Flash into a student saved with hummingbird DNA, and Wonder Woman into an Inca activist. The series was his most surreal excursion outside of Marvel. Although caffeine is not a standardized treatment for attention deficit disorder, some studies suggest that it could help manage the symptoms. In a study with young, hyperactive rats, the combination of caffeine and exercise improved behavioral performance and levels of serotonin and dopamine. However, the effects vary in each individual, and more research is required. There is a building on Fenchurch Street in London that reflects the sun so well that it has melted the bodywork of cars. It is the skyscraper nicknamed the Walkie-Talkie, officially called 20 Fenchurch Street, whose curved glass facade concentrated sunlight like a concave mirror, raising the temperature so much that it damaged parked vehicles. There is an action figure of the famous painting The Scream by Edvard Munch that has joints that bend so you can put it in all kinds of poses. Shut up and take my money. The movie Clue from Paramount, released in 1985, which was based on the popular board game, has 3 different endings. They were randomly sent to different movie theaters, so your experience could be different from other people's. This marketing trick has not been used again in a popular film, only in some experiments on streaming platforms. By the way, they are already making a remake of that movie. The leaf grasshopper, in addition to having the evolutionary trait of looking like a leaf so predators do not notice it, also has its ears on its legs. Specifically, they have a structure called a tympanal organ on their limbs that detects vibrations and helps them hear sounds accurately. In New York, there is a hot dog vendor who pays $289,000 per year for his street location in Manhattan. The stand is near Central Park, one of the areas with the highest tourist traffic, which explains the high cost of the municipal permit to operate in that prime spot. Genghis Khan exempted the poor from paying taxes, established freedom of religious beliefs, and offered people the opportunity to join his empire before being conquered and probably killed. Scientists wanted to prove that ants knew the way back to their nests because they had a system similar to counting their own steps. So they put stilts or leg extensions on them that made their strides longer. The ants with these attachments overshot their nest by more than 50% of the distance, confirming the theory. There is an index called the Good Country Index that measures how much each country contributes to the planet and to humanity. In its most recent version, Sweden ranks first, followed by Denmark and Germany. This index evaluates aspects such as science, culture, peace, climate, and well-being, among others. The Latin American country ranked highest on the list is Chile, in position 33. Despite popular belief, some people can lick their elbow, although for most it is anatomically impossible due to the length of the forearm and the mobility of the neck. There are exceptional cases of people with great flexibility or particular body proportions who can manage to do it. Billionaire Forrest Fenn hid a treasure in the Rocky Mountains that was estimated to be worth between $1 and $3 million. To find it, you had to solve a series of riddles that he designed and published in a poem. The treasure was found in 2020 by a man named Jack Stoof in the state of Wyoming. Over the years, the search mobilized thousands of people and was even linked to several deaths before it finally ended. The creator of the series Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, offered the show to different television production studios before it finally ended up with AMC. For example, TNT executives were excited but ultimately did not commit. FX bought the rights in 2005 but decided not to film it, and HBO rejected it outright and surely regretted it afterward. White truffles, also known as Alba truffles, are the most expensive fungi in the world, costing up to approximately $1,360 per pound. They grow mainly in Italy in symbiosis with tree roots. They are so rare because they only grow in the wild, relying exclusively on animals for their dispersal. In Great Britain, there is an underground aircraft fuel transportation system from the time of the Second World War. It allowed fuel to be transported throughout the country without risking it on roads or railways. Metallica was the first band to perform on all 7 continents: Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Europe, and Australia. Yes, apparently that is what the continents are called now. During the First World War, France devised a unique strategy to protect its capital, building a fake city on the outskirts of the real one. This duplicate included replicas of iconic monuments such as the Arc de Triomphe. It also had simulated lights and trains. Its purpose was to trick bombers into destroying it. Construction began but was left unfinished due to the end of the war, and everything was dismantled. Cars can travel at whatever speed they want on the Autobahn, the highway system in Germany. However, it is recommended to drive at approximately 81 miles per hour. If an accident occurs where someone was driving at a higher speed and it could have been avoided by going slower, that driver will automatically be considered at fault. The lyrics of the national anthem of Algeria were originally written with blood on a prison wall. Corn, just as we know it, cannot exist in the wild. It can only exist if it is cultivated by humans. There is evidence that we have been cultivating it for about 7,000 years. In 1989, around 2 million people joined hands, forming a human chain that stretched 373 miles, passing through 3 different countries: Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. It was part of a protest against forced inclusion in the Soviet Union. The 3 countries regained their independence in 1991. The texture of aluminum cans that contain food is necessary to allow flexibility during the packaging process and to add structural integrity during transportation and storage. It makes them more resistant. Chloe Grace Moretz mentioned in an interview that she never says bad words because she would be punished, referring to the criticism of her character in the movie Kick-Ass, Hit Girl, who spends her time using profanity and killing people. Eddie Murphy was almost not hired on the show Saturday Night Live, a job that launched his successful career. because they had already chosen an African-American member for the cast. The smallest Costco store in the world is in the city of Juneau, Alaska. It measures approximately 76,694 square feet, half the size of the average of other locations, while the largest is in Salt Lake City, Utah, and measures around 234,952 square feet. Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show in 1993 had higher ratings than the game itself. It is estimated that it had an audience of 133 million viewers, this in the United States alone, making it one of the most watched events in the history of that country. The system of democracy was established 2,500 years ago in Athens, Greece. There, a direct democracy was practiced, in which male citizens personally participated in public decisions. Although it excluded women, slaves, and foreigners, it laid the foundation for many modern political principles. The leader of the country of Myanmar, formerly called Burma, was advised by a fortune teller who told him that his country was leaning too far to the left, politically speaking. To fix it, he forced the population to drive on the right side of the roads, which caused accidents and a lot of confusion. Astronaut Chris Hadfield once mentioned that during his stay on the International Space Station, all the astronauts tried to move around using their own gases. Although it was theoretically believed to be possible, in their case it did not work. It did not provide enough thrust. In 2014, in Germany, the police found a man who had an arrest warrant for failure to pay debts. They found him in a casino. At the moment they went to get him, the machine hit a jackpot that he used to pay his debts right then and avoid jail. The construction of the 102-story Empire State Building in New York began in 1930 and was completed in record time, just 1 year and 45 days. At one point, more than 3,500 construction workers were working at the same time. When it was completed, it was the tallest building in the world, a record it held until 1970. When Yahoo started in 1994, it was called Jerry and David's Guide to the Internet, and it was only a page with a list of links to websites organized by categories. Just 6 years later, Yahoo became, for a short period of time, the most valuable company in the world, when its shares reached a price of $475. In the year 1233, Pope Gregory IX declared war on cats, mainly black cats, because he considered them accomplices of the devil, unleashing a fierce hunt throughout Europe. This caused that years later there were fewer cats, and therefore more rats that spread the plague more quickly afterward. The moral is, do not mess with cats, or 1/3 of the entire population disappears. Glass is not biodegradable because its main ingredient is sand, which is not biodegradable despite being a naturally occurring material. Not all types of glass can be recycled, such as drinking and cooking glass that is treated with extra elements to increase its resistance to temperature changes. Lions used to be the mammal that covered the most territory in the world. They were present on all continents, but their dominance ended approximately 12,000 years ago when humans spread out and perfected hunting with tools. In some places, it rains in a reddish color, a phenomenon called blood rain. It occurs when sand particles concentrate and mix with rain in the clouds. These particles come from air currents from deserts. It happens in countries near the Sahara Desert, but also in Asia and the Middle East. Explorer Michel Siffre conducted an experiment in which he lived completely isolated approximately 426 feet underground for 2 months without any time reference, and discovered that his biological clock had shifted to cycles of sleeping and being awake that lasted 48 hours instead of 24. NASA took the conclusions of these experiments into account for the Apollo space missions. The 7th most popular religion in Great Britain was once listed as Jediism, with around 175,000 people declaring it in the 2011 census. Most did so as a protest or joke inspired by Star Wars, rather than as a formally organized religion. In 1945, a B-25 plane crashed into the Empire State Building, cutting the elevator cable. By the time the elevator reached the floor, so much cable had piled up underneath that it acted as a cushion. The person who was inside at that moment was injured, but did not die. In the 1950s, the United States Army conducted nuclear weapons tests in an area so close to Las Vegas, Nevada, that the mushroom clouds caused by the detonations could be seen from the windows of some hotels, something that, for a time, was marketed as a tourist attraction before its dangers became evident. In total, around 15 million Ford Model T cars were produced, of which, more than a century after production ended, It is currently estimated that 60,000 remain in running condition. The first mechanical clocks, including the oldest pocket watches from the 16th century, had only one hand. These single-hand clocks indicated only the hours, similar to sundials. Precision was not as crucial at that time. Old tower clocks also had only one hand. Cornflakes, the popular breakfast cereal, contain more genes than people. It does not make sense, but that is how it is. Some crickets build their own megaphones. It was discovered that some small crickets bite into leaves and make a pear-shaped hole and position themselves in such a way that the sound they produce is amplified by the leaf. They do this to find a mate. According to Guinness records, the goldfish that lived the longest was Tish, a pet fish that reached the age of 43 years. With proper care, such as not keeping them in very small bowls, these fish can normally live 10 to 15 years. After analysis, it was confirmed that meteorites that fell to Earth during a meteor shower in July 2011 came from Mars. The rocks discovered in Morocco were likely ejected from the surface of the red planet during an ancient asteroid impact. Surnames tend to disappear after several years. In China especially, this phenomenon is occurring where 96% of the population shares only 200 surnames. Because of its density, Saturn is the only planet in the solar system that could float on water. Even though it is the second largest planet, it is also the one with the least mass. Jupiter's gravity could dramatically alter Mercury's orbit in the distant future. There is even a small probability that this planet could collide with Venus, Earth, or the Sun. However, this would not occur for billions of years. Gravitational interactions can have surprising effects on astronomical timescales. One of Osama bin Laden's sons is a resident of Great Britain. His visa was initially rejected because he could not provide a fixed address for his father. In 1168, the Vizier Shawar ordered the burning of Fustat, then the capital of Egypt, to prevent it from falling into the hands of the Crusaders, led by Amalric I of Jerusalem. The fire lasted 54 days, reducing the city to ashes. This act marked the end of Fustat as a political center, as it was absorbed by Cairo. Volcanic ash has been used as an abrasive ingredient for many years in soaps, erasers, polishes, toothpastes, and beauty products, among others. Radio took 38 years to reach 50 million users. Television took 22 years, the computer 14, YouTube 4 years, and Instagram only 1.5 years. Before air conditioning was invented, people used ingenious techniques to stay cool. For example, houses with high ceilings so heat would rise, shaded porches to socialize during hot evenings, and sometimes they even slept on fire escapes. It is said that some people would store their underwear in the freezer so they would have an option to cool off quickly. The painting The Starry Night by Van Gogh, which was painted while he was in a psychiatric hospital in 1889, perfectly captures the scientific phenomenon known as turbulence with mathematical precision. Physics would not manage to explain it until 1940. During the Tokyo real estate bubble in 1980, the area of the Imperial Palace, approximately 1 1/3 square miles, was valued at more than all the properties in the state of California, United States, combined. Archaeologists can tell which skeletons belonged to archers because years of training and the tension force of ancient war bows caused the bones to deform to compensate for muscle growth in the arms and shoulders. Everglades National Park in Florida, United States, is the only place in the world where crocodiles and alligators naturally coexist. This unique ecosystem, considered the only subtropical wilderness in North America, is home to both species. Alligators have U-shaped snouts, and crocodiles have V-shaped snouts, and, in general, are larger. A homeless man in Thailand found a wallet with money and credit cards. Instead of taking what it had, he gave it to the police. Impressed by the man's honesty, the owner of the wallet gave him a job at his factory, which brought him a salary and a place to live. A species of hermaphroditic worm has an unusual way of dealing with its loneliness. It injects sperm into its head in order to reproduce. In Sacsayhuaman, an ancient Inca fortress in Cusco, Peru, the walls are formed by stone blocks weighing up to 120 tons, that is, around 264,000 pounds. These stones were carved and assembled with such precision that not even a sheet of paper fits between them. This technique has allowed the structure to withstand natural disasters for centuries. The sea breeze exists because of temperature differences between land and sea. During the day, the land heats up faster than the water, creating low pressure zones over the land. To restore balance, the cooler air from the sea moves toward the land, creating this phenomenon. At night, the opposite effect occurs, the land breeze. NASA used pencils on the first space trips that were made. Later, it spent millions to develop a space pen that would work in zero gravity. There is an extremely rare variant of tiger called the golden tiger. Currently, there are fewer than 30 individuals. Also known as the golden tabby tiger, it is not a distinct subspecies, but a genetic variation of the Bengal tiger that affects fur pigmentation, producing a lighter tone and softer, wider stripes. This condition is the result of a rare recessive gene, and most of the individuals that exist today are in captivity, since in the wild, their survival would be more complicated due to their reduced ability to camouflage. The son of billionaire Warren Buffett, Peter, received at 19 years old the only inheritance his father would give him for personal use, $90,000 in Berkshire Hathaway stock. Today, the value of those shares would be $300 million, but he sold them years ago to finance his music career and says he does not regret it. He won a regional Emmy for the music of the series 500 Nations. Even though Singapore has a reputation for being a free market country, around 80% of Singaporeans live in apartments built by the government. The Housing and Development Board has built approximately 1 million units concentrated in 23 self-sufficient new towns that are interconnected. This unique approach has made Singapore's public housing program one of the most successful in the world. The largest statue from before the modern era, the Lashan giant Buddha, was built to calm the turbulent waters of a river. The amount of stone deposited into the same river when it was carved helped make it safer for boats. Michael J. Fox was accidentally hanged for real and lost consciousness while filming a scene in Back to the Future Part 3. Technology companies have used New Zealand as a testing ground to launch products, since it is an isolated place where they can observe people's behavior and reactions without too much impact. For example, it was one of the first 3 countries where the Pokemon Go app was launched. In Greenland, there is only one university with 14 employees and 150 students. An episode of the series Scrubs that mocked that type of show that used multi-camera setups won an Emmy for Best Multi-Camera Editing. A Jewish boxer named Salamo Aruch was imprisoned during the Holocaust, where he was forced to fight other prisoners. The one who lost was sent to the gas chamber or killed. He survived more than 2 years by winning more than 200 fights and was eventually liberated when the war ended. People who play video games regularly are more likely to have lucid dreams, which is the ability to realize when you are dreaming and control what happens. The video game Perfect Dark for Nintendo 64 was going to include a feature that allowed players to put their own faces and those of their friends into the game, either as enemies or as allies using images from the Game Boy camera. However, due to development difficulties, the feature was ultimately scrapped. Babies instinctively hold their breath up to 6 months of age. This reflex, known as the diving reflex, causes them to close the glottis and hold their breath automatically when in contact with water. As they grow, the reflex disappears, so it does not replace constant supervision. During the occupation of France by the Nazis in the Second World War, the French resistance cut the cables of the elevator of the Eiffel Tower so that Hitler would have to climb the stairs. John Lennon signed the document that formalized the dissolution of the Beatles at Disney World, specifically at the Polynesian Village, while he was on vacation in 1974. A few days earlier, the other 3 members of the band had met to sign, but Lennon could not, or did not, want to attend. The 4 of them were never again in the same place. Ireland is the country that produces the most software in the world after the United States. 48 hours after quitting smoking, nerve endings begin to grow back, and the senses of smell and taste start to return to normal. The holes in crackers do not exist for aesthetic reasons. They are perforated before baking so that steam escapes in an orderly way, preventing the dough from forming bubbles and puffing up like bread. They also help distribute the salt more evenly. Cicadas, also known as cicadids, produce a sound that can reach the pain threshold for a human if heard at close range. It reaches 120 decibels, equivalent to standing next to the speakers at a rock concert. Sometimes lightning occurs during volcanic eruptions. This phenomenon, known as volcanic lightning, happens when ash particles collide with each other inside the eruptive cloud and generate electrical charges, similar to those in a storm. Friction and intense atmospheric activity produce spectacular discharges over the volcano. Pat Morita suffered from tuberculosis at an early age, which caused him to have to wear orthopedic body casts constantly between the ages of 2 and 11. He was told he would never walk again. But fortunately, that did not happen. Later, he played several famous roles, the most well-known being Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid movies. From 1978 to 1989, skateboards were banned in Norway. For 11 years, it was the only country where you could not buy, sell, or use them. There is a phenomenon called thunderstorm asthma, where certain rare meteorological conditions can trigger massive asthma attacks. During storms, pollen fragments into tiny particles that, when inhaled, cause severe symptoms even in people without a history of asthma. The oldest public housing complex in the world is still in use. It is located in Germany and maintains an annual rent of only approximately $0.95, or its equivalent, since 1516. As requirements, residents must be Catholic, have lived in Augsburg for at least 2 years, and prayed daily for the owners. The doors close at 10 p.m., and each apartment has a unique doorbell to identify it in the dark. There is a species of cone snail that immobilizes fish with insulin before eating them alive. It is the geography cone snail, which releases a cocktail of toxins called conotoxins, along with a form of insulin that causes a sharp drop in the fish's blood sugar, leaving it disoriented and defenseless in seconds. Global debt amounts to $348 trillion. That figure is equivalent to around 3 times the gross domestic product of all countries combined. A tick bite can cause you to develop a lifelong allergy to red meat due to the sugar they inject, which produces antibodies that cause the allergy. The oldest parliament still in operation is that of Iceland, which was founded in the year 930. Its meetings originally brought together clan leaders to legislate and resolve disputes. It is even in the same original location. Ford Model T cars initially, between 1908 and 1913, were available in several colors, including red, blue, green, and gray. However, starting in 1914, Henry Ford decided to produce it exclusively in black to optimize production and reduce costs, since black paint dried the fastest. The Model T was the first car produced in a factory using the assembly line system. In every episode of the series Seinfeld, there is at least one Superman somewhere. Jerry's character is a fan of the superhero, and throughout the series, there are figures, magnets, or visual references related to Superman, becoming a recurring detail for attentive viewers. The hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica is approximately 7,700,000 square miles. In some years, especially in the early 2000s, its maximum extent has exceeded nearly 8 million square miles during the austral spring, although its size varies depending on atmospheric conditions. The phenomenon is mainly due to chlorofluorocarbons released in past decades, which destroy ozone molecules in the presence of sunlight. When you turn 19 years and 4 days old, you have already lived 10 million minutes. It is estimated that the Beatles played together for more than 2,000 hours during their shows in Hamburg, Germany. This was before they obtained their first recording contract. During their most active period, they played up to 46 hours a week, and, according to estimates, before their arrival in the United States, which marked the beginning of their worldwide fame, they had already accumulated at least 10,000 hours of practice. The budget for NASA is only 0.9% of the federal budget of the United States. People think it is more than 20%, according to surveys. If you think you are so special that you say you are 1 in a million, then there would be around 8,000 people just like you anyway, considering that the world population already exceeds 8 billion inhabitants on the planet. There is a post office underwater in the South Pacific, near the island of Vanuatu. It is the only underwater post office that exists. Vacationers who want to send a waterproof letter home can go down diving. When Samsung gave Galaxy S7 phones to athletes at the Olympic Games in Rio in 2016, the government of North Korea confiscated the ones that had been given to its athletes. It is believed that the same thing happened in Paris 2024 with the Z Flip 6 phones. The clever Hans effect is when an animal appears to be doing things that are too intelligent, but in reality, it is only reacting to involuntary movements in its trainer's body. Clever Hans was a horse that his trainer claimed could solve arithmetic problems. People could not understand how a couple was able to keep a restaurant in China running 21 hours a day without rest. They began calling the place the Robot Couple Restaurant. Later, it was discovered that, in reality, the place was managed by two pairs of identical twins. The most watched interview in the history of television is the one Oprah did with Michael Jackson in 1993. 90 million people tuned in. In the city of Pompeii, there were more than 200 takeout restaurants, and most houses did not have spaces for dining or cooking. In many cities of ancient Rome, this type of establishment was fashionable. Some adventurers climbed the Ojos del Salado volcano in Chile using Jeep Wrangler vehicles and set a record for the highest altitude reached by a vehicle, approximately 21,800 feet. To celebrate, they put up a sign that read, "Parking for Jeep only." Shortly afterward, other adventurers managed to surpass that record by approximately 656 feet using a Suzuki Samurai and removed the sign in the process. The unpleasant tingling sensation you feel when your foot falls asleep is called paresthesia. It occurs when a nerve is temporarily compressed, interrupting the normal signal between the brain and the limb. When circulation and nerve function return, those characteristic stings or tingles appear for a few seconds. In 2008, the police in Great Britain granted a firearms license to a 7-year-old boy. The permit was not to carry firearms in public, as one might imagine, but a legal certificate to use an air rifle under strict supervision. In the United Kingdom, minors can obtain this type of license under specific circumstances, as long as there is parental consent and strict safety regulations are followed. The band Fleetwood Mac went on a concert tour in the United States with a fake lineup in 1974, when the original members were in the middle of problems with their manager, Clifford Davis. After some shows, the press and the public realized the fraud. The electricity needed to power an iPhone for 1 year costs only half a dollar. Mike Jeffries, owner of the clothing brand Abercrombie & Fitch, once said that he does not want overweight or unattractive people to wear his clothes or be employed by his company. According to director Edgar Wright, the movie Baby Driver is based on the music video for Mint Royale's Blue Song, which he himself directed, where a driver listens to music while waiting for his friends who are committing a robbery, and then they escape. The movie is the same concept, but expanded. We lose approximately 6 months of our lives waiting for the traffic light to turn green. The Woman of the Seine was an unknown woman who was pulled from the bottom of the Seine River in 1880. At the morgue, the mortician was so impressed by her beauty that he made a mold of her face. Today, her face is used for first aid training mannequins. She is the most kissed face in the world. The first business Bill Gates started was a company that made machines that counted the number of cars passing on a street. Pandora viruses are a genus of giant virus that infect amoebas. They have a genome much larger than that of any other known type of virus. 90% of their genes have no known equivalent, so it has been speculated that they may belong to an unknown branch of the Tree of Life. They have been found in the permanently frozen layer of Antarctica. The video game Black Myth Wukong, developed by an independent Chinese studio and which sold millions of copies in its first days after release, is based on the Chinese novel Journey to the West. The popular franchise Dragon Ball is also based on that story as its original inspiration. Among the similarities they share, for example, both main characters use a magical staff. The forests of the cork oak tree, from which cork is obtained, are beginning to become a threatened species because cork is being used less and less. Tigers can eat up to approximately 60 pounds of meat in a single night. Although they do not hunt every day, when they do, they can consume large amounts at once, since in the wild, they do not always know when their next meal will be. An adult tiger can devour a considerable portion of its prey in just a few hours and then rest while it digests. It may return to the carcass for several days until it has used up almost all the available meat. 14 years before the sinking of the Titanic, writer Morgan Robertson published the novel The Wreck of the Titan, in which an ocean liner named Titan, which did not carry enough lifeboats, crashed into an iceberg in the North Atlantic, too similar to what later happened with the Titanic. After 1912, the work gained popularity as an accidental prophecy. In Cordia del Rio, Seville, Spain, more than 600 people have the last name Japón. This unusual surname dates back to 1614, when the samurai Hasekura Tsunenaga arrived in Spain on a diplomatic mission. Some members of his expedition stayed, and in the mid-17th century, the first baptism with this surname was recorded, referring to their country of origin. The first Mortal Kombat game was based on a Jean-Claude Van Damme game that failed. They kept the character anyway and named him Johnny Cage. Space Invaders from 1978 was the first video game that kept high score records, encouraging players to beat them to leave their names stored on the machine. This was one of the reasons it became one of the highest-grossing games. It is even said that it was so popular that it caused a shortage of 100 yen coins in Japan. According to research, the clearest lakes can be the most polluted. This is because acid pollution, such as acid rain, eliminates plankton and microorganisms that give color to the water, leaving it without living beings. However, there are also lakes that are naturally like that. In 1386, a pig was sentenced to public execution in France for the murder of a person. In the Middle Ages, it was common for animals to be subjected to formal trials, with lawyers and sentences, especially when they caused the death of people. In 2012, French beekeepers could not solve the mystery of the blue and green honey they were producing, until they realized that their bees liked to visit a local M&M's factory. In the region of Laguna in Brazil, bottlenose dolphins guide fish toward local fishermen and then signal with tail slaps for them to cast their nets. The dolphins feed on the fish that escape. These dolphins were not trained for this behavior, and this collaboration between dolphins and fishermen has been occurring since at least 1847. The German MG-42 machine gun fired so fast that the ears could not distinguish between each shot. Instead, it sounded like the noise you hear when fabric is being torn. The word Ethernet is a registered trademark of Xerox. The technology was developed at the company's research center in the 1970s, and the name remained protected as a trademark. Over time, it became the most widely used standard for local area networks around the world. The belief that goldfish only remember for a few seconds and then their memory resets is completely false. Studies have shown that they can have long-term memory. They can learn routines and tricks, such as responding to light signals and swimming through hoops, demonstrating advanced cognitive abilities. Many old movie theaters had crying rooms, where you could take your children if they were misbehaving and still enjoy the film peacefully. In 2009, Amazon sold diapers so cheaply that it lost more than $100 million, all to force Diapers.com to sell them their business. If the amount of water in your body decreases by just 1%, you will begin to feel thirsty. If it drops 10%, you can die. Clement Vallandigham, a defense attorney, accidentally shot himself while demonstrating the possibility that the victim had shot himself instead of being shot by his client, who turned out to be innocent thanks to the demonstration. The best lawyer of all time. If you stretch one of these things, it can measure up to 82 feet. There is a club of people who look like the writer Ernest Hemingway that has more than 100 members. The Roman Emperor Julius Caesar ordered the construction of a wooden bridge over the Rhine River in just 10 days, using advanced techniques for the time. He then crossed with his army and remained 18 days in Germanic territory without significant confrontations, and later destroyed the bridge upon returning. This action was a demonstration of power to deter future Germanic incursions. Less than 4% of the Earth's land has an antipode, meaning land directly on the opposite side of the planet. There are few places where you could hypothetically dig a hole of approximately 7,917 miles that would take you to the other side. More than 1,700 words used today were invented by William Shakespeare. Although not all were created from scratch, he was the first to record them in writing or to give them new meanings. Many arose by combining Latin and Germanic roots, greatly expanding the vocabulary of modern English. There are more people in the Tokyo metropolitan area than in all of Canada. In 1960, Richard James, inventor of the Slinky, abandoned his wife Betty and their 6 children to join a religious group in Bolivia. Betty took control of the company, rescued it from bankruptcy, and turned it into a success. In 2001, she was inducted into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame for her leadership and business vision. J.R.R. Tolkien served as a lieutenant during the First World War. He fought in one of the most important battles, and it has been suggested that the horrors of trench warfare shaped his later descriptions of Mordor in The Lord of the Rings. Soldiers have to break step, that is, stop marching in rhythm when crossing a bridge, because in 1831, the rhythmic march of British soldiers broke a bridge and they fell. Approximately 25% of men in Russia die before the age of 60 due to the amount of vodka they consume. There is a 9-hour Netflix documentary about the musician Prince, where recordings of 8,000 unreleased songs that he wrote and kept stored in a vault are reviewed. However, it was reported that it will never be available to watch since the artist's family did not approve its release. It is said that there are hundreds of music videos and songs he never released. Smarter people can make a sarcastic remark faster than people who are not that smart. Studies on cognition suggest that sarcasm requires processing literal information and then reinterpreting it with the opposite intention, which involves mental speed, cognitive flexibility, and a strong ability to read social context. The King of Jordan, Abdullah bin al-Hussein, was an extra in the 1996 episode of Star Trek Voyager titled Investigations. Walt Disney World in Florida, with an area of more than 24.7 square miles, is almost the size of San Francisco, or 2 Manhattan Islands combined. Due to the lack of family and friends at his funeral, the pallbearers of Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassin of John F. Kennedy, were reporters. The leaders of the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy were among those who opposed the reunification of Germany in 1989. The Prime Minister of Italy even declared that he liked Germany so much that he was glad there were 2 instead of 1. But in the end, as we know, they were reunified. During the 1,232 episodes across the 25 seasons in which Ash Ketchum starred in the Pokemon anime, he only caught 57 different Pokemon. If evolutions are included as new Pokemon, his total was 98, which represents only 12% of those that were available to catch. Not a very good percentage considering that his goal was to catch them all. In 2009, a woman named Patricia DeMauro rolled a pair of dice 154 times in a game of craps at a casino without losing her streak. She broke world records. The probability of this happening is 1 in 5 billion. In London, there are more Indian restaurants than in Mumbai or Delhi, the most populated cities of that country. Pop star Sabrina Carpenter is the direct niece of Nancy Cartwright, the voice actress who since 1989 has portrayed Bart Simpson. This was revealed in 2024 in a video by Cartwright herself. This means that Bart Simpson is technically Sabrina Carpenter's aunt. Stevie Nicks is the only woman who has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once as a member of the band Fleetwood Mac, and again for her solo career. George Reeves, the actor who played Superman in the 1950s, had to be careful because sometimes his fans tried to test his powers. One day, a fan pointed a gun at him. Reeves convinced him not to shoot by saying that the ricochet of the bullet could harm someone nearby. That is really staying in character. When you get angry, your face turns red because your heart is beating faster to send more blood to your muscles. This reaction is part of the fight or flight mechanism, activated by the release of adrenaline and other stress hormones. The blood vessels in the face dilate, increasing blood flow in the skin and causing visible redness. At the same time, the body prepares for a possible physical confrontation, increasing muscle tension and breathing rate, even if the situation does not end up requiring action. The first recorded cat name in history dates back more than 3,400 years in ancient Egypt. The cat was named Negjem, which means sweet or pleasant in ancient Egyptian. This name was found in a tomb in Thebes, demonstrating the affection Egyptians had for their felines. In 1996, Bear Grylls broke his back after falling more than 2 miles when his parachute failed. 2 years later, he climbed to the summit of Mount Everest. His secret is drinking his own urine, apparently. In half of the households in Asia and Africa, people pay a license to have television each year. Cats are actually neither nocturnal nor diurnal, but crepuscular. This means they are more active during dawn and dusk. This evolutionary adaptation allows them to hunt when their prey is most active and the light is dim, taking advantage of their excellent vision in low light conditions. San Marino is the oldest republic still in existence in the world. It gained its independence from the Roman Empire in the year 301. Stalin's guards were so afraid of him that they did not call a doctor until 12 hours after he suffered a stroke. They were afraid he would recover and execute anyone who had acted outside his orders. The Supreme Court of Italy established that stealing small amounts of food to avoid starving is not a crime. The rap section in Evanescence's song Bring Me to Life was added by the record label, since it was the trend at the time in the nu metal genre, even though the singer Amy Lee did not want it. It is even said that they sought out Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park to record it, but he refused. The fossil of Borealopelta is so well preserved that it looks like a sculpture. Discovered accidentally by Canadian miners in 2011, This 110-million-year-old dinosaur preserves its skin and soft tissues intact, allowing scientists to see what it really looked like without the need for speculation to recreate its appearance. When the astronomer Fritz Zwicky, the father of dark matter, was forbidden from using a telescope at Palomar, he responded by calling the other astronomers spherical bastards, because, as he explained, they were bastards no matter which direction you looked at them from. Beauty pageants for children under 16 years old are banned in France and can be punished with 2 years in prison and a fine of up to approximately $32,000. Due to vacant lots and mass evictions caused by the economic problems of the city of Detroit in recent years, a rather unusual effect occurred. Hundreds of ring-necked pheasants occupy much of the city, inspiring urban art, bird-watching groups, and a proposal for it to become the official bird of the area. Harrison Okene is a man who survived at the bottom of the ocean in a sunken ship because he found an air pocket, that is, trapped air inside the ship. The hobby of Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario Brothers and Company, is trying to guess how tall objects are. He enjoys it so much that he always carries a measuring tape with him. The Batmobile from the Dark Knight trilogy is called the Tumbler and was not based on any existing car. It was designed from scratch and was fully functional. It even had a suspension system that allowed it to jump. Several replicas were built that have actually been auctioned for millions of dollars. In 2013, in China, stockings for women covered with fake hair became fashionable. They wore them to avoid unwanted male attention. The name of the canned meat product, Spam, originated in a contest. It was in 1936 when the founder's brother-in-law won $100 for coming up with the word Spam, which turned out to be the winner. It is believed to come from the abbreviation of spiced ham. Decades later, in sketches by the comedians Monty Python, they repeated the word so excessively that it inspired the term used to name junk email. A 73-year-old man named Herbert Sukernick received $17 million to move out of a rent-controlled apartment because developers needed the space to build the luxury building 15 Central Park West. This payment, made in 2005, is considered the highest ever given to a tenant to relocate in that city. In Nairobi, Kenya, country music is very popular because, according to them, Kenyans can identify with the lyrics. More than 15% of the music sold there is from that genre. The Nenets people in Siberia have survived temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 1,000 years. They depend completely on their reindeer herds, which they use for food, clothing, tools, and transportation. The word legendary comes from the Latin legendus, which means that which must be read. In the Middle Ages and before, writing and reading were uncommon. At that time, a legendarium was a collection of stories about saints and martyrs. But over time, legend came to mean any traditional or mythological tale, and legendary remained as the adjective describing something worthy of that type of narration. The first commercial logo ever registered was that of Base Beer in England, on January 1, 1876, just after the trademark law was approved in the United Kingdom. The emblem, which is a simple red triangle, has remained practically unchanged since then, becoming an icon of graphic design. A grizzly bear bite can crush a bowling ball. It is estimated that its bite force far exceeds that of most land mammals, with pressure capable of crushing thick bones. This power allows them to feed on large prey and defend themselves effectively in the wild. The kissing scene in the 2014 movie Noah was repeated so many times that Emma Watson ended up with blood on her lips, and Douglas Booth with a dry nose and lips. In the first quarter of 2024, the total hours played in the video game Roblox reached more than 17 billion. This equals more than 1.7 million years of combined playtime in just 3 months. During that same period, the company reported more than $800 million in revenue. Speaking more than one language makes the brain more agile and increases the intelligence quotient. Various studies suggest that bilingualism strengthens attention, working memory, and the ability to switch tasks, since the brain must constantly manage 2 linguistic systems, which can delay certain effects of cognitive aging. The cost of solar energy has dropped extraordinarily since the 1970s. In 1975, the price of solar panels was around $100 per watt. By 2026, the average price of solar modules on the international wholesale market is approximately between 15 and 20 cents per watt, depending on the country and the purchase volume. Charles Martinet, the voice of Mario in the Mario Brothers games, portrayed the wise dragon Parthenax in the game The Elder Scrolls Skyrim. His voice was digitally lowered to sound colossal. Scientists found traces of cannabis in pipes discovered in William Shakespeare's garden. Only two species have domesticated other species: ants and humans. Ants have domesticated certain aphids. More than 1 billion women live in countries where domestic violence is not considered a crime. One day, the well-known American host Oprah brought a wagon carrying 66 pounds of fat onto her show to illustrate how much weight she had lost in 1988. To this day, she regrets that unpleasant act. Around 17% of twins are left-handed, compared to non-twins where only 10% are. There is a group that, instead of musical instruments, uses typewriters. The Boston Typewriter Orchestra was founded in 2004. They mix percussion, satire, and office fashion in their concerts. After 20 years, they are still touring. Two movies competed to have the song Who Let the Dogs Out when it was released. Nickelodeon wanted it for Rugrats in Paris, and Disney for 102 Dalmatians. But in the end, Nickelodeon won because it offered to pay to produce the music video and hold a special live concert with the band Baha Men. Halle Berry is named that way thanks to a store. Her parents named her after the Halle store located in Cleveland, United States. City birds have gotten used to building their nests with cigarette butts. Burned nicotine helps repel parasites. A restaurant in New York City called Industry Kitchen holds the Guinness record for offering the most expensive pizza in the world: $2,700. The pizza, which must be ordered 2 days in advance, is topped with 24-karat gold leaves, blue cheese, and French truffle. And if you want to add caviar, it costs $700 more. In 1996, Rowan Atkinson, portraying Mr. Bean, visited a shopping mall in Canada where he signed copies of VHS tapes with episodes for his fans. However, the situation got out of control. More than 3,000 people showed up, and Mr. Bean had to ask them not to push while staying in character. Although the event was supposed to last an hour, it had to be stopped after only 20 minutes, and Mr. Bean left escorted by a security team. 75% of households in Japan have high-tech toilets where it is not necessary to use toilet paper. They can also keep you warm, check your blood pressure, make water sounds for privacy, open and close on their own so you do not have to touch anything, and I think they even talk. Onomatopoeia is the frustration felt when it is not possible to find an appropriate word for what you want to say, or when you cannot remember it. Thomas Edison's last breath is trapped in a test tube in a museum in Michigan, United States. During a friendly soccer match between Malta and Slovakia in September 2014, when they were about to play the national anthem of Malta, the first seconds of the song Numb by Linkin Park were played instead. Although it was corrected quickly, the reactions of the crowd and the players were noticeable, resulting in a humorous moment of confusion. Almost 1,100 million tons of food are wasted on the planet each year. Most of it comes from households, followed by restaurants and department stores. According to studies, people who seem to be distracted all the time have better memory and a sharper brain. Some research suggests that so-called mind-wandering activates brain networks associated with creativity and memory consolidation, which can facilitate faster connections between ideas and previous experiences. In the event of a nuclear explosion, it is not recommended to use conditioner because it can cause radioactive material to stick to your hair. Actor Bob Odenkirk, known for his role as the lawyer Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad, discovered on a television program that his family tree connects him as an 11th cousin of King Charles III of the United Kingdom. News he took with humor, although he emphasized that he does not support monarchies and prefers democracy. American psychologist Timothy Leary was imprisoned in 1971, where he was given a series of psychological tests to assign him an appropriate job inside the facility. What they did not anticipate was that Leary had helped develop some of those tests earlier, so he used his knowledge to secure a gardening assignment, a position that allowed him to escape easily shortly afterward. A man asked Samsung for a cell phone in exchange for a drawing of a dragon that he made. Samsung sent him a special phone with his dragon printed on the case. A prison in Indiana, United States, allows inmates to adopt cats in their cells. The program was implemented to reduce stress and encourage responsibility among the inmates, who care for rescued animals. In addition to improving coexistence, it has helped many cats find permanent homes after the adoption process. Despite having billions of neurons, the brain cannot feel pain. This is because brain tissue itself does not possess nociceptors, which are the receptors responsible for detecting painful stimuli. That is why, during certain neurological surgeries, patients can remain awake without the brain experiencing direct pain. However, the structures surrounding it, such as the meninges, blood vessels, and scalp, do have pain receptors, and when they become inflamed or tense, they can cause severe headaches. The gin and tonic originated with the British East India Company in India as a way to make the taste of quinine more pleasant, which was used to prevent and treat malaria among its workers and soldiers. To soften its bitterness, they mixed it with sugar, lime, water, and gin. In addition to being a model and actress, Cara Delevingne is also a songwriter, plays the drums, and likes to play video games, especially Call of Duty. The characteristic smell that elderly people have is caused by a chemical substance called 2-nonanol that is secreted through the skin. This compound begins to be produced more frequently after the age of 40, when certain metabolic processes change and the oxidation of skin lipids increases. Unlike other body odors, it is not necessarily related to hygiene, but to natural changes in the body. In Japan, there is a service that rents average-aged Japanese men, where you can rent one if you feel lonely, for only $10 an hour. The brain of giant squids is shaped like a donut. Their esophagus passes through it, which means that everything they eat goes through the middle of their brain, and if they eat something too large, it can cause damage. The astronomer who discovered Pluto's moon, Charon, chose the name as a tribute to his wife Charlene. Only later did he realize the fortunate connection. In Greek mythology, Charon is the one who carries the souls of the dead across the river Styx to the realm of the god of the underworld, Hades, also known as Pluto. The then President of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, was shot before giving a speech. When he realized it had not pierced his lung because he was not coughing up blood, he proceeded to deliver the speech, which lasted 90 minutes. A teacher from Utah, United States, was fired because she created a blog about homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same but mean different things and can also be spelled differently. The supermarket chain Walmart has an unwritten rule that allows owners of recreational vehicles to spend the night in their parking lots. This is permitted if authorized by the store manager, unless local laws prohibit it. Owners of these vehicles are considered among the best customers of this chain. There are still 4 NFL teams that have never been to a Super Bowl: the Cleveland Browns, the Detroit Lions, the Houston Texans, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The team that makes The Simpsons sent flowers to the studios where South Park is made when they parodied the series Family Guy in one of their episodes. The word coccyx comes from the Greek term for the call of a cuckoo. They named the bone at the base of the spine that way because it resembles a cuckoo's beak. This bone is the vestige of a tail that many animals have, but in humans, it was reduced to what it is now. In 2008, Doritos projected a 30-second advertisement to a planetary system 42 light-years away from here, in collaboration with the Space Center in Norway. What kind of image are we giving to our space neighbors? The video game Tropico 5 is banned by the dictatorship in Thailand because, according to them, it is a threat to national security. When Netflix split its service between DVD by mail and the new streaming section, they renamed the DVD and video game rental service Quickster, a change that was clearly poorly received. After the stock dropped 77%, they regretted it, and it returned to being just Netflix. Bibliophobia is the irrational fear of having nothing left to read. Although it is not an official clinical term, it is used to describe people who feel anxiety at the thought of not having books or any other reading material available. In 2004, a worker at the tax office in Finland died in his cubicle, and although there were more than 100 people working there, no one realized he was dead until 2 days later. In ancient Egypt, actors were forbidden from testifying in court because they were seen as professional liars. The rarest type of star in the universe is the WO type Wolf-Rayet, a very brief phase in the life of giant stars. They form when a massive star loses almost all of its hydrogen and helium, exposing elements such as highly ionized oxygen before exploding as supernovas. Only a few are known in our entire galaxy. They are a very scarce and fleeting phenomenon. When humans breathe, we only replace 15% of the air in our lungs. In contrast, when dolphins breathe, they can replace up to 90% of the air inside their lungs. These mammals have millions of years of adaptation to life in the sea. The International Space Station is the most expensive thing ever built so far. It has already cost $150 billion. The project involves several space agencies and has been continuously inhabited for more than 2 decades, functioning as an orbiting laboratory for scientific research in microgravity. Americans consume approximately 3,700,000 pounds of sugar contained in Coca-Cola each year. This figure is based on the enormous volume of soda sold in the country and on the fact that a single can contain around 1 4/10 ounces of sugar, mainly in the form of high fructose corn syrup. Woodpeckers have a tongue so long that when it is retracted, it wraps around their skull. This, along with the anatomical shape of their head, helps prevent the blows of more than 1,000 Gs that they deliver to wood from causing concussions. Some squirrels cure mushrooms in the same way humans make jerky. They take the mushrooms and hang them on tree branches to dry. This helps preserve them during the winter, in addition to preventing bacteria and larvae from reaching their main food storage, where they keep acorns and other nuts. There is an international zip line that if you jump on it, you land in another country. It is between Spain and Portugal. In a study conducted with 200,000 ostriches over a period of 80 years, it was confirmed that none of them stuck their heads in the sand or dirt when they were frightened. They did not even try. Cartoons have been lying to us. In the 16th century, English sailors received part of their pay in rum. To make sure it was not diluted, they added gunpowder to see if it would ignite, which only happened if the rum had an alcohol content of 57%. The United States is the third most populous country in the world, with 347 million. Even so, if, for example, its population increased by 1 billion, it would still remain in third place anyway, since the first two places, India and China, have 1,463,000,000 and 1,416,000,000 respectively. In Homer's narration in the Odyssey, the Trojan horse is mentioned only as a hollow structure or a wooden device without specifying its shape. It is believed that the horse may have been a mistranslation or an artistic interpretation of the event. The air that potato chip bags are filled with, which makes us so angry, is actually nitrogen, and it helps keep the product fresh and also prevents the chips from being crushed during transport. Female Greenland sharks reach maturity at around 150 years of age. This species, scientifically known as Somniosus microcephalus, is one of the longest living vertebrates on the planet and can easily surpass 400 years of life. It inhabits cold and deep waters of the North Atlantic and the Arctic, where its extremely slow metabolism delays its growth and development. Scientists estimated its age by analyzing proteins from the lens of the eye, a technique that revealed that its life cycle is extraordinarily slow. According to a study that analyzed the spread of 126,000 rumors, it was concluded that false news spreads farther, faster, and lasts longer than true news. People tend to share what is novel, even if it is doubtful. Babies have 30,000 taste buds, and not only on the tongue, but also on the sides and the roof of the mouth, compared to adults who only have 10,000 and only on the tongue. For this reason, they react in what could be considered an exaggerated way when tasting certain foods. Brides normally stand on the left at wedding ceremonies so that the groom has his sword hand free in case someone tries to attack him and carry off his future wife, although that almost never happens these days. The first aircraft carrier that China had was a retired ship that belonged to Ukraine that was sold to a Chinese businessman who acquired it to turn it into a floating casino in 1998. Phantom vibration syndrome exists, and it is when you think your phone is vibrating. It happens to a considerable percentage of people, including me. When the final match of the 1950 World Cup in Brazil ended, the famous Maracanazo, 3 people died from heart attacks caused by the shock of seeing their team lose. Steve Jobs' biological father was an academic from Syria who emigrated to the United States and owned a restaurant in Silicon Valley, the same area where Jobs lived with his adoptive family. It is even said that they met several times at the restaurant without knowing they were related. There is a library in Norway that is located on a boat. It is called Epos and has existed since 1959 with a capacity of 6,000 books plus 20,000 that can be on loan. It travels between 3 counties in the region. It was close to being taken out of service, but was saved thanks to the efforts of local residents. The longest train journey you can take starts in Portugal and ends in Vietnam. In total, it is 10,563 miles. The route connects Western Europe with Southeast Asia through multiple transfers and can take more than 3 weeks, crossing countries such as France, Germany, Poland, Russia, and China. Rats can squeeze through a hole as small as 1/4 of their size thanks to their collapsible skeleton. In reality, it is not that their bones bend, but that their rib cage is very flexible, and if their head can pass through an opening, the rest of their body can almost always pass through as well. Aspartame was discovered in 1965 when chemist James M. Schlatter was synthesizing a drug for ulcers and accidentally put his finger in his mouth, detecting an intensely sweet taste. Its sweetening power, which is approximately 200 times that of sucrose, drove its industrial development worldwide. December 31st, 1844, is a day that did not exist in the Philippines, since the country moved from one side of the international date line to the other to simplify trade with neighboring nations. The Hawaiian singer Israel Kamakawi once called a recording studio at 3 in the morning to ask if he could record. He arrived 15 minutes later and recorded the song Over the Rainbow in a single take. The American football season of 1905 was so dangerous that 18 players died. The President of the United States at that time, Teddy Roosevelt, had to form a committee so that forward passes would be legalized. The shortest short film ever nominated for an Oscar lasts less than 2 minutes. It is a stop-motion animation called Fresh Guacamole. In Serbia, you are allowed to vote 2 years earlier, at 16 years old, if you have a job. The law includes this exception for legally emancipated young people who work and contribute to the system, although the general voting age in national elections remains 18. Somali pirates have an investment system similar to the stock market, where you can invest in a group of pirates who, after a successful raid, will pay you part of the profits. The website urbandictionary.com has been used in court cases to define words that are not in official dictionaries. Since the International Space Station has existed, the average number of people in space at any given time has been 7. However, in recent years, that number has increased significantly, reaching a maximum of 20 people in 2023 due to China's Tiangong Station and other missions overlapping. The last player to appear in an official National Hockey League game without wearing a helmet was Craig McTavish in 1997. At that time, veteran players drafted in 1979 or earlier were not required to wear helmets, until the rule was established for everyone in '97. A man who worked at a major company whose name was not disclosed secretly outsourced his job to a Chinese man while he only played on his computer. He earned thousands of dollars that way until he was discovered and fired. The Flatiron Building in New York, built in 1902, caused so many wind currents due to its shape that when women walked by, their skirts would be lifted, revealing their ankles and part of their legs. The phenomenon became so famous that groups of young men would gather nearby to witness the involuntarily indecent act. Saudi Arabia has purchased agricultural land in many countries on all continents, mainly in the United States and Argentina. They have used it to compensate for drought and the lack of arable land in their territory. Almost all of it is desert, and it does not even have a single river. On average, we spend 3 months of our lives sitting on the toilet. This number has increased significantly in recent years due to the rise of smartphones and social media. The first human-made object to reach space was the V-2 rocket in 1944, a ballistic missile developed by Germany that achieved a suborbital flight. Its liquid fuel was 30% water and 70% alcohol distilled from potatoes. King Fahd International Airport, which is located in Saudi Arabia, is currently the largest airport in the world by area, covering approximately 301 square miles. Despite this, it does not have the highest number of passengers. The airport with the most annual passenger traffic is Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, United States, with 93.7 million passengers per year. An even larger one is already being built in Saudi Arabia and will be completed in 2030. Every night, the maintenance staff at Walt Disney World spreads very hot water so that the chewing gum on the walkways and in the ride lines melts. They also use pressurized steam machines to remove residue from the pavement and maintain the impeccable cleanliness that characterizes the park. Open Cola is an open-source, cola-flavored, carbonated beverage brand. That means the instructions to prepare it are available to everyone and can be modified. The Japan-exclusive video game Moritsa Shogi 64 for Nintendo 64 from 1997 had a built-in modem connection to play online with other players across Japan through servers. It was one of the first examples of online gaming on consoles. The Beastie Boys came up with the name mullet for this particular hairstyle in 1994 in their song Mullet Head. The term became popular and entered everyday language. No one had used the term before them. In the Second World War, the British captured Germans and placed them in a mansion with microphones, where they were served luxurious food and wine. This allowed them to collect valuable information from the casual conversations the prisoners had. This helped end the war. Listening to music is one of the few activities that can activate all areas of the brain. It not only activates the auditory areas, but also those related to emotion, memory, movement, and even attention. The rumor that you should not throw rice at weddings because pigeons and birds can explode due to moisture absorption in their insides is completely false. Taiwan is the first country in the world to offer free Wi-Fi connection for all citizens, for foreigners, and for tourists as well. Taiwan, I am on my way. The cork from a champagne bottle can shoot out at a speed of up to 50 miles per hour when opened. The pressure that builds up inside these bottles can reach up to 3 times the air pressure of regular car tires. Veins can appear blue because subcutaneous fat only allows blue light to pass through to where the veins are. So that is the only color that is reflected, causing this peculiar effect. The maximum prison sentence in Norway is 21 years. This was established after the death penalty was banned in 1971. The bite force of piranhas has power equivalent to 30 times their body mass. If we compare it relative to their size with other animals, their bite is stronger than that of a Tyrannosaurus rex. In 1980, a Star Wars Christmas album was released. It featured the participation of Bon Jovi, who, at that time, had not yet achieved worldwide fame with his band. He collaborated on the song R2-D2, We Wish You a Merry Christmas. On December 30, 1899 at midnight, a ship positioned itself at the intersection of the dateline and the equator so that the bow and stern occupied different seasons, hemispheres, days, years, and centuries. For the ship, December 31 never occurred. A pilot not trained to fly using gyroscopic instruments can enter a fatal spiral without even realizing that he is turning. Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Dave Navarro, who was also in the band at the time, played bass and guitar respectively on Alanis Morissette's hit You Oughta Know from 1995. In addition, the man who would soon become the drummer for Foo Fighters, Taylor Hawkins, played drums during the Canadian Singers tour that year. A perfect Oreo cookie should have a ratio of 71% cookie and 29% filling. In 1994, a FedEx cargo plane suffered an attempted hijacking by an angry employee armed with a hammer. The crew attempted extreme maneuvers with the aircraft in an effort to throw the attacker off balance, and they even flew upside down. In the end, they managed to subdue the angry man. This also sounds like a movie. There are 93 million Wangs in China. It is the most common surname in that country. Wang means king in Mandarin and has a history that dates back to ancient dynasties. Due to China's enormous population, even a small percentage represents tens of millions of people. The French astronomer Guillaume Le Gentil spent a long time trying to observe the transits of Venus in the 18th century to measure the distance to the sun. However, when he traveled to India to finally make the measurement, clouds ruined his observation. Then he became ill, and when he finally returned to France, his possessions had already been given away and his wife had married someone else. After some time, he managed to rebuild his life and his scientific legacy, but not his wife. The photo of the Wright brothers' first airplane flight was taken by a photographer named John T. Daniels. Up to that moment, he had never seen a camera in his entire life, and all he did was press a button to take the picture. In addition to seeing a camera for the first time that day, he witnessed the first airplane flight in history. It was a productive day. A man named Daniel Balsam became so angry about receiving spam in his email inbox that he left his job to study law and now dedicates himself to filing lawsuits against those who send so-called junk mail. The record for the longest marriage is 90 years. It was achieved by Karam and Kartari Chand in England. He was 110 and she was 103. Unfortunately, in October 2016, Karam died of natural causes. Garbage collectors in Ankara, Turkey, opened a library with all the books they have found while collecting trash that people had thrown away. Their collection contains more than 6,000 copies. 50,000 years ago, watermelons were pale green and tasted bitter, but they were selectively bred to have a sweeter flavor. In the process, their flesh turned red. A woman in England has 4 color cones in her eyes, unlike the 3 that we normally have. This allows her to see 99 million more colors than average people. The video game Kerbal Space Program, where you can build rockets to go to space and to visit other planets with realistic physics, began as an experimental project by Mexican developer Felipe Falange. He worked at an advertising agency. It was released in 2011 and became one of the most successful indie games. It has even been used by NASA for education. Before 1916, people could enter the torch of the Statue of Liberty with capacity for 12 visitors at a time. The area was closed due to sabotage carried out by German agents in the incident known as the Black Tom explosion, which partially damaged the structure. Now, only maintenance personnel are allowed inside. The name orchid is derived from the Greek word for testicle, while avocado comes from the word in the Nahuatl dialect for testicle as well. The most decorated soldier of the United States in the First World War was an undocumented Mexican named Marcelino Serna. After becoming the most famous child star in Hollywood of her time in the 1930s, Shirley Temple went on to have a very serious diplomatic career in adulthood. She was the United States ambassador to Ghana and to Czechoslovakia during the period of the fall of communism. By the way, her daughter was for a time the bassist of the grunge precursor band Melvins. The series Squid Game was planned to be a single-season story, but after its success, Netflix decided to order 2 more seasons. The creator of the series, Hwang Dong-hyuk, only had 6 months to write seasons 2 and 3, which were filmed at the same time. Before all of this, he had been trying for almost 10 years to get a studio to produce the series. 1/3 of all humans live in areas with so much light pollution that it is impossible to see the Milky Way at night. Studies on artificial sky brightness estimate that this figure is even higher in urbanized regions of Europe and North America, where the glow of cities and highways almost completely erases the starry sky. Christopher Nolan thought the character of Catwoman would be too exaggerated and overacted for the movie Batman: The Dark Knight Rises, but his brother Jonathan convinced him to add her to the script. It is possible to create a plant that grows potatoes underground and tomatoes above ground through grafting. This is possible because they can grow under very similar conditions. The video game market generated in 2024 $182 billion. It can be estimated that around 70% of this revenue came from free-to-play games and microtransactions. This game model continues to grow year after year, regardless of the platform. In some comic book issues, starting with Tales of Suspense 45 from 1963, Iron Man uses skates that allow him to travel at more than approximately 186 miles per hour. According to the dialogue, they are powered by jet engines and fueled by transistor energy, although that is not how transistors work, but oh well. Norway's coastline is so long that it would be the equivalent of going around planet Earth 2.5 times if all its fjords and islands are counted. This enormous extension is due to its geography deeply carved by ancient glaciers, which formed thousands of inlets and peninsulas. In Denmark, there is an underground vault that contains all the Lego sets that exist so far. It is located at the company headquarters in Billund and functions as a historical archive where at least 1 copy of every commercially released model since the mid-20th century is preserved. The collection includes thousands of sealed boxes, catalogs, and prototypes stored in controlled conditions to preserve their original state. It is a kind of time capsule that documents the evolution of design, engineering, and popular culture through the famous bricks. Greenland has areas in its territory that are farther east, farther west, farther north, and farther south than Iceland. It is as if it were indirectly hugging it. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, released in 1997, is the only book that had sold 100 million copies after The Lord of the Rings, which was released in 1954. Leonard Nimoy only appeared in public as Spock once. He needed help from the police to leave the place because there were thousands of fans trying to get his autograph. Seals, sea lions, and walruses are close relatives of bears. These animals share a common ancestor that lived more than 50 million years ago. This ancestor was a land mammal similar to an otter that gradually adapted to aquatic life, giving rise to modern seals. One day, Mozart proposed marriage to Marie Antoinette of Austria. The offer was rejected. In reality, they were never a couple. Mozart promised to marry her when they were children. The author of the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was a chocolate taster for the company Cadbury when he was a child, but at least they did not make him disappear. That much we know. In South Australia, the best-selling beverage is Farmers Union iced coffee, an iced coffee that consistently outsells Coca-Cola. It is the only region in the world where a non-carbonated milk-based drink is more popular than cola soda. The third oldest tree of all was cut down by the United States Forest Service in 1964 for research purposes. At that time, it was believed to be 3,000 years old. It was later confirmed to be at least 4,682. Mario Brothers was born after Nintendo wanted to make a game about Popeye where he would be the hero, Olive the damsel, and Brutus the villain. But the deal to obtain the license did not go through. Because of this, Shigeru Miyamoto created Jumpman, who would become Mario, along with Pauline and Donkey Kong in 1981. A year later, Nintendo released the Popeye game when they were able to obtain the license, and its gameplay was almost identical to Donkey Kong. The voices of almost all the zombies in the video game Left 4 Dead were recorded by the lead singer of the band Faith No More, Mike Patton, who has also recorded his voice for movies and other video games, including Portal 2. He is considered one of the rock vocalists with the widest vocal range. A study revealed that only 2.6% of the ants in a colony are always active. 25% appear to never be working, and 71% are inactive half the time. North Korea is the happiest country in the world after China. This according to a study conducted by researchers from North Korea. Although the color violet and the color purple are very similar, purple does not actually exist naturally. It is a composite color formed by mixing blue and red, while violet is pure, since it is present in the visible spectrum of light with a specific wavelength. The more a person believes in the way romance is portrayed in movies and television, the less likely they are to take their own relationship seriously, according to studies. There is a large number of radioactive wild boars in Germany that became contaminated by the radioactivity left by the Chernobyl disaster many years ago. They continue to reproduce more and more. This sounds like a bad movie. Some fruits and vegetables require a lot of care to reach supermarkets, such as bananas, which must be transported cold while they are green. Before reaching stores, they go through a rapid ripening process where ethylene is added and the temperature is raised so they are ready. Bill Gates founded in 1989 a company separate from Microsoft called Interactive Home Systems, with the purpose of decorating customers' homes with digital art by famous painters using frames with screens, technology that had not yet been developed. Currently, the company changed its name and is dedicated to marketing. Frida Kahlo arrived at her first solo exhibition in Mexico in an ambulance, disobeying her doctor's orders. The exhibition was held in 1953 at the Galería Arte Contemporáneo in Mexico City. Despite her delicate health condition, she was set up in a bed inside the gallery to receive guests. In the state of Pennsylvania in the United States, alcohol still has an 18% tax to pay for the damages caused by a flood in 1936. Ryan Reynolds admitted that it was he himself who financed and later leaked the Deadpool test footage that went viral in 2014. This helped the studio approve the making of the movie after seeing the fans' reaction. With a budget of $58 million, the film ended up grossing more than $780 million. There are only 3 countries that do not offer paid maternity leave: Suriname, Papua New Guinea, and the United States. During the O.J. Simpson car chase, Domino's Pizza sold the same number of pizzas as on a Super Bowl Sunday. There are craters at the poles of Mercury that are so deep that the sun's rays have never reached the bottom. Scientists discovered that there is frozen water at the bottom of these craters. All this despite Mercury being known as the hottest planet in the solar system because of its proximity to the sun. The Palmyra giant salamander can extend its tongue up to 50 times faster than you can blink. There are flowers that only bloom at night that evolved to attract nocturnal pollinators such as moths or bats. These flowers usually have light colors such as white or pale yellow and emit intense fragrances to make them easier to locate in the dark. One day, a Brazilian police officer was shot and would have been injured if it had not been for the Lumia 520 cell phone in his pocket, which absorbed the full force of the shot and stopped the bullet. We miss you, Nokia. In 2007, a man named Jeremy Harper decided to count to 1 million. He streamed it live and did not leave his house or shave until he finished. It took him 3 months. The Pittsburgh Steelers are among the only 7 NFL teams that do not have cheerleaders. They have not had them since 1969. A trick archaeologists use to determine whether what they found is a rock or a fossilized bone is to touch it with their tongue. Bone is porous, so the tongue sticks slightly. In contrast, rock is smooth. But nowadays there are other more sophisticated and less gourmet methods to determine it. The first time the word nerd was used was in 1950 in the book If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss, a well-known author of children's books. In this work, the term was used to describe an imaginary creature, and, over time, the word became part of popular language to refer to people with intellectual or technological interests. Despite popular belief, nuclear power plants are one of the cleanest ways to generate energy. They produce up to 100 times less radiation than coal plants and do not emit pollutants into the environment. There is a lake in Palau, a country in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where jellyfish evolved without stingers. This happened after the lake lost its connection to the sea, leaving these animals isolated from their natural predators. Now these jellyfish are harmless, and people can swim with them. The first commercial rechargeable batteries were developed in 1859. They used lead plates and were large and heavy. Later came nickel-cadmium and nickel-iron batteries. The ones currently used are lithium, and their density has made it possible to manufacture the devices we use daily, such as smartphones. At the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil, there is an island of approximately 30,000 square miles called Marajo Island, which is one of the places with the greatest biodiversity in the world. It was inhabited by the Marajoara culture, one of the oldest civilizations in Brazil, known for its decorated pottery. In Switzerland, there are enough underground shelters for the entire population of the country, and more. Since the Cold War, the law requires that every new building include access to a bunker. Currently, there are protected spaces that exceed the total number of inhabitants, equipped with airtight doors and independent ventilation systems. In 2012, mathematician V. Hart sent an open letter to Nickelodeon Studios to inform them that the pineapple where SpongeBob lives has a geometrically impossible design. The creator of the pineapple responded on his blog, saying they would change it to a mathematically correct design. That is the one now used in the show. The musician from the well-known new wave band Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh, composed the main theme for the Nickelodeon series Rugrats. He later worked on the soundtracks of films such as the Lego Movie, Thor Ragnarok, and is going to participate in the music for the Minecraft movie. There are several gold vending machines in various countries. The first one was made in Abu Dhabi. They are armored like an armored vehicle and are tested with explosives to prevent theft. There is an edible mushroom that grows in almost all parts of the world, called Watiparus. It is famous because its taste is similar to fried chicken. It is popularly known as chicken of the woods and usually grows in large clusters on tree trunks, especially oaks. Its fibrous texture resembles white meat, and that is why it is widely used as a plant-based substitute in different cuisines. It is estimated that there are thousands of artificial objects in the moon left by human missions, including tools with module components, rovers, flags, golf balls, a self-portrait by astronaut James Irwin, $102 bills they plan to leave and bring back, shoes, and so on. Hopefully one day, someone will go clean all that up. The first cat to travel to space was Félicette, launched by France in 1963 in an experiment where her brain waves and vital signs were measured. Félicette, also nicknamed Astrocat, survived the trip and landed safely, something that was not common in these experiments of sending animals into space. The first person to jump from the Brooklyn Bridge was a professional diver who wanted to prove that people did not die simply from falling through the air. And indeed, falling 131 feet through the air did not harm him, until he hit the water, and the impact killed him. In Lithuania, there is a theme park where you can experience being a citizen of the Soviet Union. Visitors have their belongings confiscated, are interrogated, have to wear a gas mask, and must learn the Soviet anthem. In the end, everyone receives a ration of vodka. The T-28 Super Heavy Tank was an experimental American tank designed in 1945 that weighed more than 90 tons. Designed to break through fortifications with a top speed of 8 miles per hour, after testing, it was considered lost for decades until it was found in 1974 in a storage field. Weird Sisters, the fictional band that appears in a scene of the movie Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, features cameos by real-life musicians, the lead singer of Pulp, Jarvis Cocker, and Johnny Greenwood and Phil Selway of Radiohead. According to its gross domestic product, Singapore is the third richest country in the world. This position is usually measured by gross domestic product per capita adjusted for purchasing power parity, where it stands out for its economy oriented toward finance, maritime trade, and technology, despite its small territory. 47 million years ago, whales walked on land. Their ancestors were mammals similar to small carnivorous deer that lived near rivers and coasts. Over time, they developed legs more adapted for swimming, noses that migrated to the top of the skull, and more streamlined bodies. Fossils found in Asia show clear intermediate stages of this evolutionary transition, one of the best documented examples of how a land animal returned to the sea. There is a soda in Ghana called pea cola, that is, pea cola. Good name. The first DVDs were sold in Japan in 1996, with compilations of music videos and some movies, while in the rest of the world, it was starting in early 1997. The first new movie released on DVD at the same time as VHS was Twister, and the first movie that sold more on DVD than on VHS was The Matrix. The Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was destroyed by a man who wanted to make himself famous for his crime against humanity. After his execution, the Greeks established that anyone who pronounced his name would be sentenced to death from that moment on. The name of turkeys tells a somewhat confusing geographic story. In English, they are called Turkey, like the country. In Portuguese, they are called Peru, like the country. In Turkish, Hindi, meaning from India. In Dutch, Kalkun, for Calcutta. While their original name, guajolote, comes from the Nahuatl word huesolotl. In parts of Europe, people thought it was an eastern bird and therefore associated it with India. Kodokushi, which means lonely death, is a common phenomenon in Japan in which people die alone and remain undiscovered for a long time. Walmart loses around $3 billion a year to small-scale theft. This phenomenon, known in the industry as shrinkage, includes theft committed by customers and employees. To reduce losses, the company invests in cameras, advanced surveillance systems, and real-time inventory tracking technology. Squirrels can adopt baby squirrels they see that need care or that were abandoned. This behavior has been observed mainly in red squirrels, where females can take care of orphaned young if they are close relatives, such as nieces or granddaughters. Studies suggest that this adoption increases the survival of shared genes within the group, which is known as kin selection. Although it is not extremely common, it shows that even small wild mammals can display complex social behaviors. In 2015, the National Air and Space Museum of the United States exhibited Wonder Woman's invisible airplane for several days. There was a ceremony, workers with cranes were installing and cleaning it, and many people went to observe it. Even though it was invisible, they treated it like any other historic aircraft. On August 14, 1945, more than 1,000 Japanese officers entered the Imperial Palace to destroy the Emperor's recording. It was when he surrendered in the Second World War, the first time the Japanese heard his voice. But since the palace is built in very complex, labyrinth-like shapes, they could not find the recording, which shortly afterward went on the air. They would have been better off each taking over a room and waiting for the bubble of 1980. There is a radio frequency coming from Russia that has been broadcasting the same sound since 1982. No one knows for certain where it originates or what it means. Sometimes voices can be heard giving orders, numbers, and names. In 1993, Pepsi ran a promotion in the Philippines where you could win 1 million Philippine pesos if you found the number 349 inside the bottle cap. Pepsi accidentally printed 800,000 winning caps. The anger of the people was very great, and brand executives even received death threats. The Corona program satellites, which began in 1959 and took the world's first satellite photographs, operated using photographic film rolls. When they were full, they were ejected in capsules into the atmosphere. They then descended by parachute and had to be caught mid-air by airplanes equipped with hooks. Otherwise, they self-destructed to prevent falling into the hands of spies. The bear Lotso from Toy Story 3 was going to appear in the first movie, but they saved him because the technology to animate his fur did not yet exist. Bart had much more dialogue in the episodes of the first season of The Simpsons than in all the other seasons that followed, due to Homer's popularity. The difference between a slow metabolism and a fast one is 200 calories, or approximately 17 fluid ounces of Coca-Cola. A NASA scientist conducted an experiment to determine which animal is more likely to be run over by motorists. He placed plastic animals on the side of a road and realized that 6% of drivers deliberately swerved to crush them. Tarantulas were the most run over. In 1995, the company Namco patented auxiliary games, smaller games to play while the main one loaded, preventing other companies' games from using them. The patent just expired recently. Pixar attributes its success to its anti-Disney style. No songs, no happy ending, and no love stories. Instead, they do everything possible to make you cry. Redundant acronym syndrome is when one of the words that make up an acronym is used separately along with the abbreviation. For example, VAT tax or HIV virus. The first time the Japanese heard the voice of their emperor was when he announced on the radio that Japan would surrender in the Second World War. A study showed that when a Monopoly player is given twice as much money, he generally begins to act disrespectfully toward his opponents and becomes more competitive. The color of a flame changes according to its temperature. The core is light blue because it is the hottest part of the flame, at 2,552 degrees Fahrenheit. After that, the temperature decreases as it changes to yellow, orange, and red. Last year, an injured turtle was found in a forest in Brazil. It had lost almost all of its shell. Some specialists created one for it using 3D printing, and an artist painted it to look like its original shell. The skin of octopuses can change color up to 177 times each hour. The metropolitan area of the city of La Paz, Bolivia, has the largest urban cable car network in the world. It exceeds 18.6 miles and has 10 lines, being the backbone of public transportation in that city. This system was a necessity due to the variations in altitude of the terrain. Disney gave actor Robin Williams a Picasso painting as a thank you for his participation as the genie in the movie Aladdin, where he was only paid $75,000. The actor was accusing them of breaking a specific agreement they had. He had agreed to voice the genie and receive that salary on the condition that his voice would not be used in merchandise such as toys or promotions. He even declared that he would not work with them again. The Picasso painting, as an apology, did not work. While 27 people die each year in elevator accidents, 1,600 die in accidents from choosing to use the stairs. Most of these deaths are due to falls, especially among older people. Although elevators are often perceived as more dangerous, statistically, stairs represent a greater risk in buildings and public spaces. Cuttlefish can change color almost instantly to blend in with their surroundings and evade predators, even though they are colorblind. They achieve this thanks to special cells called chromatophores, which expand or contract under direct control of the nervous system. They also have iridophores and leucophores that reflect light and create complex patterns in fractions of a second. Although they do not distinguish colors like we do, they perceive contrasts and the polarization of light, which allows them to adjust their camouflage with surprising precision even on very varied backgrounds. Companies that reach a valuation of more than $1 billion are called unicorns. They generally take years to reach this status from their founding, but the one that did it the fastest is the artificial intelligence company Avant. In 2012, it reached a valuation of $1 billion in just 1 month and 16 days. The largest and most complex Japanese character of all is called Taito. It is made up of 84 strokes and means the appearance of a dragon in full flight. It clearly looks like a dragon, you can tell right away. Sergeant Stubby is the most decorated dog of the First World War. He saved his regiment from several mustard gas attacks and warned them when an attack was approaching. After the war, he appeared in parades and met 3 presidents. Starting from Earth, the hardest place to reach is the Sun. To get there, a spacecraft must slow down or counteract the force enough to cancel Earth's orbital speed around the Sun, about 18.6 miles per second, which requires a large amount of fuel. Escaping to the edge of the solar system would require less effort. Capitonyms are words that change meaning depending on whether the first letter is uppercase or lowercase. For example, Lima in lowercase is a fruit, while Lima with an uppercase letter is the capital of Peru, or Qatar, which is a country, or what tasters do, and so on. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was Tim Burton's second choice to play Willy Wonka in the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but as we all know, the role was played by Johnny Depp. An American college student who wrote an article criticizing seatbelts, expressing that they are an intrusion on individual freedoms, died in a car accident in which the other two people in the truck survived. He was the only one not wearing a seatbelt. The rock band Motorhead re-recorded its song You Better Run with the lyrics changed to You Better Swim, with different references to the bottom of the sea. This was for the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. The song is heard in the scene when they enter the Tough Guy's cantina. In a genetic study conducted on people from Iceland, it was discovered that many of them had a mutation predominant in Native Americans. It is said that this is because many Vikings had children with Native American women during the Norse exploration of America in the 11th century. In 1989, the Mitsubishi Corporation bought a majority stake in Rockefeller Center in New York. That era marked the highest point of Japan's economy. But when the real estate bubble burst in the following decade, there was a recession. Mitsubishi had to sell its share. In order to be light enough to fly, birds only have one ovary. In most species, the functional ovary is the left one, while the right one atrophies during development. This adaptation reduces weight and also minimizes internal risks during flight and egg laying. A man who got lost in a forest in Saskatchewan, Canada, broke a power pole so that workers would find him when they went to fix it. His plan worked. In Fairbanks, Alaska, it is illegal for a moose to enter a bar. This law was created because the owner of one of these establishments liked to keep his moose there and get it drunk. The animal would sometimes go very crazy and destroy things.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.